This is Sg2 Perspectives, a conversation with Sg2 experts and industry thought leaders about the biggest trends in healthcare and what we expect that's going to mean for the future of healthcare delivery.
I do hope they take away that energy and that feeling in the room that we have the opportunity to really change and do things differently. We've been encumbered by pressure of all different sorts over the last couple of 3 years. After that pressure, I think we've been thinking about and mulling over big decisions for the last 18 months or so. And now is the time to move and take action.
Welcome to Sg2 Perspectives. I'm your host for today's episode, Jayme Zage. I am joined today by two of my colleagues, Brianna Motley and Bill Woodson. And we are going to give you a little teaser of our upcoming Executive Summit, an event that is always packed with insights on how today's healthcare organizations can successfully adapt to the changing landscape. This year's theme, a pivotal moment, will have something for each of our members, each of our attendees. Whether you're a provider, life sciences and industry, you are going to find something of value. Bill, the theme, a pivotal moment. This is really important. We know all of our clients are making important decisions right now. That's the pivot. How did we land on this theme? And what are you thinking about this theme as you talk with clients across the country?
We've really wrestled about what is actually pivotal right now. And there will be people on this podcast that will think we tend to move a bit glacially. We think this is an important time, particularly for provider organizations, to think about what they're doing internally and externally. Internally, that's about structure, culture, decision-making, lines of communication. Externally, it's about how you go to market, how you may decentralize or centralize services that you use to support your system. It could be about service distribution in your market. When we use the term pivotal moment, we're not talking about 180 degrees of pivot. We're talking about 20 degrees on either side. And for most of our members, they're working on internal and external issues at the same time, often with new leadership in place, and we think that's a good thing.
The other thing that we were thinking about as we considered the theme was just the bifurcation that we're seeing in the market as we look at systems broadly from a financial performance standpoint about the degree of the pivot. That degree has to look a little bit different depending on how you're performing, and the decisions that you have to make and the actions that you have to take really are rooted in where you're sitting today and how significantly you need to move your business model to succeed moving forward.
Brianna, I agree. I think you start with a point of view as what's our financial future looking like? How resilient are we? We'll have a talk specifically on that topic. Has that reset our view of today and tomorrow, or are we just evolving out of something? But you need a hypothesis to make the decisions that are going to guide you to growth and better performance.
One of those decisions, Bill, is the org structure piece. And how do we organize ourselves to meet the new operating model, the new approach, the new strategies that we're taking on? This is something you and I have covered years ago, is that org structure. It's not a destination, it's a journey, but it feels like for some organizations, they're starting to take a fork in the road. It's a real change in the way that they're moving in their org structure. What are you seeing across the country?
It's mixed, and no one should think that any health system has landed on the right structure. When we hear from our members, the dotted line relationships are more important than ever across a health system because they're so complicated. Having said that, you probably need to check in on the way you're running your service lines and the imperatives for your service lines more than ever. And then what you decide to centralize, decentralize, distribute just needs to be a very conscious decision. Within service lines, it used to be, hey, we'll have a dyad or triad model. And we think there's so much more in that model today around consumer strategy, network integrity, service line distribution, the optimized system of care, how you go to market. It's a much more complex formula. What we're also trying to push against is there has been this traditional model of just cascading down goals in terms of a system structure, and that really hasn't worked that well. So we're encouraging our members to use the term systemness to think about how they want to run themselves moving forward.
In addition to that big picture structure component, the other thing that I'm really excited that we'll be featuring this year, especially within Summit content, is our team has been doing a lot of research around how the role specifically of the Chief Strategy Officer has changed over time and will continue to change in the future. And so our team will put forth what are those skills that are necessary for the CSO of the future? How do they fit in to the C-suite, and how is that C-suite dynamic as a whole changing? And then how do you take some of those personas or some of those characteristics and use them to be more decisive about executing on strategy moving forward, especially amidst the changing landscape?
And that strategy piece is really important also, as Bill mentioned, for the service line work. And I know that there's a panel on the service lines as well. When we think about executing on the strategy at the service line level, how is it trickling down to that level? What are we seeing there?
It's a really mixed bag right now. There are systems that continue to try and figure out what's the right balance between our operational model, our clinical model, our growth model. And then others are starting to figure out, well, to make this service line succeed, we need to focus much more on loyalty, churn, network integrity, share of wallet, and how we keep patients in the system. It just seems like a new set of competencies that are going to be needed. Even as you try to redefine or cement your product portfolio, stand out and differentiate in the marketplace.
I think from an execution standpoint at the service line level as well, one of the things our service line panel will be exploring is there's substantial growth across multiple service lines, certainly on the outpatient side and in some cases on the inpatient side as well. How do you align what you're going to effectively execute against with your overarching priorities, and how do you manage that growth effectively? So it's not just a market growth or organizational growth conversation anymore. It's also about how do you maintain access as demand increases? How do you execute against that? And what are some of those tactics in order to be able to not lose patients? Bill mentioned network integrity and consumer strategy. How do you maintain your access and keep that growth that we will see within your system to lay the groundwork for success moving forward?
Brianna, I don't want to call it a bifurcation, but we definitely have a sense there are systems that are saying we need to pursue high value, high margin procedures, everything they can to get them into the funnel, to get them into the systems. And other organizations that have said, if we're going to be successful at that, we have to build programs around those care families, care states, diseases, et cetera. I don't think they're opposed to each other. It's just a different philosophy that we're seeing in the marketplace.
That's absolutely right. And I think one of the interesting things is it comes back to what you were mentioning about matrix or dotted line structures and how much more complex organizations are becoming. And from a growth standpoint, if you're thinking about those programs specifically, I've had a lot of conversations with members recently around the topic of a service line program or a program around one disease condition. But you also have to think about what are those other dotted line services that may come into the fold of that program in particular.
So beyond service lines, what are some of the more future-focused components, the technology pieces? And artificial intelligence is certainly a big thing, and we'll have something on that. But what are some of the other innovations we're going to be talking about at Exec Summit this year?
It's important to cast a wide net there. There are a lot of things going on outside of AI or inclusive of AI. We'll bring up the idea of the smart hospital and the smart room. A lot of these innovations are designed to help or reinforce workforce shortages. But the smart hospital room, which means remote nursing models, we're going to talk about drug discovery. So the advances in clinical trials and how they're being distributed across the marketplace, the continued advances in home health, which are far beyond what we talk about in hospital, at home, personalized treatments, which get us into the cancer space and cellular therapies, and then extended reality, which I'll leave to Jayme, a couple of our other experts to talk about. The importance of pharmacy as a strategic lever has never been more essential, and the pipeline of new therapies coming into different service lines, especially cancer and immunotherapy, is profound. These will change the delivery system. So Jayme, we used to talk about what's the future of a hospital? Well, you exist for critical care and emergency services. We think now that pharmacy is a huge percentage of the business and the top line and the bottom line, and we'll try and highlight that as well.
That's really important. We're hearing more and more about the innovations on the pharmacy side that are really, in some cases, going to eliminate surgical interventions. You're really preemptively getting at patients from a medical perspective, and that is also going to have an impact on the surgery piece. And that's going to require some pivotal moments, making some decisions around how you adopt some of those, because some of them are really pricey as well.
Jayme, I'll turn it around to you because you interact with a lot of our life sciences members. What do you think is important to that audience for the pivotal moment?
It's really about understanding what's happening with their customers. These are the providers, and knowing where they can lean in. Bill, you and I are going to have different panel sessions on partnerships, and a couple of those are going to share stories from partnerships between life sciences and industry and providers. And that's really a pivotal moment for them in terms of looking differently at each other. It's not just transactional, but how do we solve for challenges together? That's one of the things that we're encouraging increasingly seeing with our life sciences and industry members. They're looking for ways to be a true problem solver in the ecosystem. There's gains that they get from that by those stronger relationships with the providers. It secures that business, but that's not the only reason they do that. They do it also because they learn from the providers as well. And so they're there to learn and understand what's top of mind for providers and what those pivots are that they're anticipating making in the coming years.
I'm really excited about all of these partnership sessions because it does feel like something we've been talking about conceptually for years. And to be able to highlight so many different angles on partnership and dive a little bit deeper into discussion around what's working and quite honestly, what's not, where have we pivoted along the way, I think is going to be incredibly beneficial for our member audience.
Absolutely agree. Brianna, you've spent some time working as a strategy leader at a health system. As you think about the audience that's coming to our session, these strategy leaders from across the country are strategic thinkers because some of them are CEOs and other personas as well, but they're certainly into the strategy. What are you hoping that they take away from the Exec Summit this year?
Thinking back to where we opened the conversation in terms of the theme and this being a pivotal moment, I do hope they take away that energy and that feeling in the room that we have the opportunity to really change and do things differently. We're going to need to for several different reasons. We've been encumbered by pressure of all different sorts over the last couple of years, 3 years. After that pressure, I think we've been thinking about and mulling over big decisions for the last 18 months or so. And now is the time to actually move and take action. And we do have a lot of really inspiring leaders across the industry, especially as some of these leadership teams have changed out. We want our members to take away that feeling and that energy of excitement in this pivotal moment. We also want to leave them with some tangible ideas of where they should versus shouldn't be pivoting. Coming back to what Bill was mentioning, in terms of the degree of pivot, there certainly are things that people are doing that is working really well. And our goal is to highlight that and provide a little bit of reassurance that if this is the path you're on, stay the course. Don't pivot for the sake of pivoting, pivot intentionally and with energy and enthusiasm. The last thing that I would point to is the need to be nimble. We don't know what the outcome of some of these pivots will be. And we have to remain nimble, remain energized in continuing to make small tweaks and adjustments as we go along down that path, because there isn't just one course to success.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end our conversation today. I hope this got you energized about our Executive Summit. Thank you, Brianna and Bill, for sharing some insights and some foresights of our Executive Summit with our audience today.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us, and/or follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn at Sg2 Healthcare. And if you want to talk more about innovative healthcare strategies, you can always email me at sg2perspectives@sg2.com. Finally, SG2 is a Vizient company, and there are a bunch of Vizient podcasts that you might like. You can find them at Vizient /podcasts. Have a great day.